Well, there's some times where you can be at a loss for words because you're in the presence of somebody that really is a Canadian icon. Can I use that freely, Bret?
Go right ahead.
Bret Hart, on Backstage, on Shaw TV, right here, in the flesh. And that's almost, I guess, a miracle that you are still here today.
Well, I count my blessings every day that I've made it this far.
Okay, so we know that you're a champion in the ring, but I never knew you could do a book. 7 years about Bret Hart, the Hitman.
Well, I put everything I could possibly, all my energy, everything I had, I went into this book for. It took me 7 years to write it, and you know, I think in my own way, I think I've opened people's minds up to maybe just to this, maybe the fact that I'm a little smarter than I look.
Yes, well, definitely. Okay, we're going to start with your family because there's so much in this book to talk about, and we don't have a lot of time. But I want to talk first of all about family, about your dad, Stu, your relationship. You were actually afraid of tights, and little did you know that you're going to spend most of your career in tights.
I used to be really afraid of like ladies' lingerie, or bras, panties, leotards. You know, you could chase me down the street in a pair of leotards. But I got over all that.
Yeah.
You know, who would ever imagine that, I don't know how many years later, I'd make a pretty lucrative living wearing pink leotards, you know, so.
What was it like in those growing up years in the Hart household?
You know, it was kind of, I always, reminds me a bit of Lord of the Flies, the movie, you know, like just a bunch of kids that were out of control, you know, that my poor parents really had to, you got to have 12 kids to appreciate what 12 kids is like, and I think the Hart boys kind of raised the bar on bad kids, trouble and getting into mischief and stuff like that. And I think my mom and dad had an incredible amount of willpower, inner strength just to survive all those years with the kids.
Well, we know that definitely wrestling was in and is still in your blood probably. Moving on, getting into the WWF in those early years. A lot of things happened.
Vince McMahon was like kind of like God in the sense that he could make you king of the world, and he could tear you down and ruin you. I think I wrote somewhere in the book that it was like somebody walking by with all the steaks. All the dogs are jumping, you know, and everybody, you know, there's a few dogs that get the right steaks and stuff, but for a long time I was one of the dogs jumping and trying to get attention. And it took me years and years to finally get that, an opportunity to sort of really showcase my abilities and my talent. But I think that was what endured me to my fans for so many years, was the fact that I started out on the very bottom, and I was always a pretty good wrestler. And I sort of always worked really hard, and I think for years people said, why don't they ever do something with Bret Hart? Like, why don't they ever give him a chance? Finally, years later, when they gave me a chance, I think that's why I always had the strong fan base I had, is because they had been with me from all those slow years, and those years that I was trying to climb up the ladder. So I think they stayed with me right to the end for the fact that they grew up with me, for one, and they watched how hard I worked.
Do you think the reason why you were so successful, though, too, Bret, is because you believed in the old rules about respect for your fellow wrestlers? And I know there's a part in the book where one wrestler said, you know what makes a good wrestler is that perseverance and respect.
Yeah, I do think that I had a lot of respect for the guys that paved the way before me, and you know, they took pride in what they did. And even my father, I think, was instilled in me always to take pride in being a champion wrestler and to carry myself like a champion, and to never forget the fans, because the fans are, you know, I remember the first, I think I wrote in there about how I remember the first time my fans would run past me. They didn't even want my autograph because they weren't even sure who I was, or that I was a wrestler of any kind of significance. And I can remember a lot of the good guy wrestlers at that time, you know, not signing the autographs and saying, I'm busy, kid, and all that. And they all walk and get in the elevators and go up to their rooms and stuff. And I remember all the kids like looking at me like, well, I wasn't important. And I remember thinking, you know, someday if I ever have lots of kids around me and I'm signing autographs, to remember this moment when nobody knows who I am and nobody cares, to remember years from now when you're getting a little impatient and you've signed forever, to remember when you didn't have anybody that even wanted your autograph. And I think that sort of humbleness and sort of respect for the fans and the people that pay to see you, I think even from the standpoint of selling programs as a kid, and
Right.
the exchange of money, like 25 cents for a program with these fans. As a small kid, I always looked at the hands, and the hands of wrestling fans were always tough hands, that had worked all day, dug, and there were farmers, ranchers, construction workers, and that kind of. And I always understood right from a very early age that they worked really hard for their money, and they came to spend it on my dad's wrestling show. And even that sort of instilled in me a respect that for my father to never forget who puts the food on the table.
Well, and the price you pay, I appreciate how hard you work, but there is the booze, there are the drugs and the steroid use and the women, and it seems like this was a lifestyle of the wrestler.
For sure, it was a lifestyle, and you kind of found whatever crutches you could find to get you through it. But in my case, I wouldn't want anyone to think that I was a steroid guy forever. I mean, I took steroids for a short period of time. And I felt that, again, there was a need to be honest about it. And I think other issues that I wrote about were a lot of the product of the times, like the cocaine use that started to manifest itself in the 70s, I'd say late 70s, 80s, probably middle 80s was when I got to WWE, WWF. It was such a new thing I was like a farm kid from Calgary, and to get overwhelmed with all this big city life, and I can relate to it. I imagine hockey players went through the same thing, and lots of entertainers and performers go through the same thing. And I only wrote about it so people, like I said, didn't take shots at me later and say, yeah, but he didn't tell you about this. I wanted to be really honest. I wanted people to know what it was like to walk in my shoes and to find themselves in the situation where I think a lot of times when I wrote about any infidelity, for example, I think I wrote about it in the sense that I was so overwhelmed with disillusionment and just so down, and everything seemed to be against you all the time, that you, including not getting much support sometimes at home,
Right.
that you felt, when I look back on a lot of that, I look back almost gratefully that someone would pick me up or take me to a movie in the afternoon or spend some time with me, and just treat me like a human being for a little while.
Why at that point, though, did you not say, that's it?
Well, I couldn't sing or dance. I was good. I always knew I was good. I always believed that I had something to contribute to the wrestling world. That I always wanted to be a film student for years. I wanted to get into film. Got sidetracked and got into pro wrestling, and I never got to make the little movies that I always dreamed about. But I got to make little 15, 20-minute movies every night as a wrestler.
Yes.
My own editor, my own stunt man. I was my own director. And I told some really quite beautiful stories if you watch them closely.
Well, it is. And before we wrap things up, one person I wanted you to comment on, Owen Hart, your brother.
Well, Owen was, in a lot of ways, was probably my closest brother. We were really close, and always, I think in a lot of ways if I was ever a big brother to any of my brothers, I was a big brother to Owen. I was always his protector and kind of advisor, and tell him what was okay to do and what wasn't, and don't do this. And sometimes in wrestling, they give you scenarios, like this is what you're going to do tonight. And then he would come back and find me and say, this is what they want me to do. And I would give him I would say, that's okay, go ahead and do it. And then he would know that it was okay to do it. And that's why I do regret that I wasn't there when his accident happened or whatever, because I think I really would have been that voice in his head right from the start and said, why would you do that? You don't need to do that. Why would you want to risk your life for a silly entrance? And I think if there's any thing to be said about Owen in this book, it probably is the simple. I feel in some ways that Owen was like a really honorable, really a great guy, just a great family man, great husband, he's a great guy. But I always felt like, I remember always trying to tell Owen to come on, come on, we'll go out, we'll do something, we'll hang out together. He was always so, Owen's life, he didn't want to hang out and have fun. He just wanted to go home. He really just went to bed every night, and I think that in itself was almost like torture, because Owen would just go to his room and hear all the music coming through the floor from the bar downstairs at the hotel, and then get up the next day and he'd never know what happened, about all the stories and things that would happen. And I think in a lot of ways Owen was a guy that was always putting his happiness was going to come tomorrow. Everything was about getting home and being happy. And my attitude was live for today, because you don't know if there's going to be a tomorrow. And in the end, that kind of turned out to be the way it kind of almost a prophecy with Owen. I mean, he said he never did get a chance to have his tomorrow. Whereas I think with my having gone through the stroke, I almost almost bit the bullet too. But I think in the end, I realized that I lived a pretty full life, and I at least got to enjoy a lot of things, good and bad. And I think I feel bad that Owen's not here to enjoy all the things he worked so hard for.
Well, I think Owen right now is looking down on Big Brother and smiling. The book is incredible. It really gives you a good insight into the life of Bret Hart. And I think life is just beginning for you.
Yeah, I think you're right.